In this video, we are going to be taking a look at histograms. Now, the goal for today is to be able to make a histogram in order to organize data. And the essential question that we are going to answer throughout this video is, how can you use a histogram to organize data? Now, I will have you turn to page 287 in your standards practice book, and we are going to take a look at a few ways to unlock this problem. So let's take a look at the activity on page 287. It says the table below shows the ages of the members of a bicycle club. Make a histogram of the data. Now, a histogram, what that is, it's a bar graph that shows how often data occur in intervals. Okay, so basically the same concept with a bar graph. Okay, we have a vertical axis, there's a label. Horizontal axis, there's a label. We also do need to give it a title. Okay, but the only difference is, and still with a histogram, the higher the bar, the more data it represents. The lower the bar, the less data it represents. But the only thing that's different that we can see here is that it's intervals. So it's not just 10, 11, 12, or so on. Okay, the ages for this one, for example, range from 10 to 19, 20 to 29. So you can see that they're intervals that each bar represents. Okay, so we can see that all the different ages of members in a bicycle club. All right, now step one, what we need to do is we need to make a frequency table with intervals of 10 to fill in the frequencies. So we have ages 10 to 19. Now, obviously, there's not anybody in the bicycle club that is 10 years old. Okay, however, the lowest age is 17. But since we're doing intervals of 10, we took this from 10 to 19. Okay, and we made a tally of 3 people from 10 to 19. You can see 17, 18, 19. Okay, so tally 3, and the frequency here would be 3. Now 20 to 29, there are 10 people from the ages of 20 to 29. Okay, so we have 1, let me use a different ink for this one. So we have 1, we scroll across, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I miss one, 10. Okay, so as we're finding these, we can just put these tally marks there. The frequency is 10. Okay, so 30 to 39. Let's use a different color ink. 30 to 39, we have 1 there. We would just write a little tally mark here. 2, another tally mark. 3, another tally mark. 4, another tally mark. And then 5 for a total of a frequency of 5 there. Then 40 to 49. Okay, we can see we have different color ink. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a total of 6 with the frequency. And then finally 50 to 59. We use black for this one. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so we have from 10 to 19 a frequency of 3, 20 to 29, 10 people, 30 to 39, 5, 40 to 49, 6, and 50 to 59, 4. Okay, now after we have done that, okay, we made a frequency table. Step 2 is we do want to choose an appropriate scale and interval for the vertical axis, and list the intervals on the horizontal axis, and also label each axis. Okay, so number of members, we want to take a look at the highest number here, which is 10. We can even go a little bit above 10, so we'll do 12 on the vertical axis, and we want to label that number of members. So you do need to label each axis so we know what the data represents. And also we have the intervals always go on the horizontal axis, so we have 10 to 19, 20 to 29, which are reflected right over here in our table. Now, one thing we do need to do is also label our graph. Just like any graph, if you do not label your graph, people will have no idea. I'm sorry, give your graph a title. People have no idea what your data is representing. Okay, so we just want to label this ages of members in a bicycle club. And I just typed it right in there so I could fit it in. And I do want you to write that right in the middle of there on page 287. Okay, now that we have everything titled, labeled, all our horizontal and vertical, both horizontal and vertical axis, what we need to do is draw a bar graph for each interval. Okay, that's step number 3. So first of all, we have 10 to 19, the ages. So we see that the frequency would be 3. So what we will do is for 10 to 19, we would just go right in between the 2 and the 4. Okay, and we will color this in just like so. Okay, now we've been make this a little bit further out there. There we go. Okay, 20 to 29. You can see that is an interval of 10. All right, so what we will do is just use different color here. So to 20 to 29 is an interval of 10. And we'll just make this bar graph go all the way up to the 10. Then from here we can just shade it right in. A little too thick. Change the size of my ink here. There we go. It's a little crooked, almost looks like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but that's okay. 30 to 39 we have 5, so we'll just do the red again for this. 30 to 39, we're going to go in between the 4 and the 6. And we'll just shade this right in here. As you can see, it's just like a bar graph, other than the fact that it's ranges. Okay, down at the bottom here. Okay, 40 to 49, we have 6 people for 40 to 49. So we'll just go right up at the 6. And we'll color that in, and I'd like, obviously, for you to do this as well, right in your standards practice book. And to wrap it all up, 50 to 59, there are 4 people. And we'll just go right at the 4. We'll color this in as well. So we can now see that our histogram does represent our data. From 10 to 19 years old, there are 5 people. 20 to 29, there are 10 people. 30 to 39, the age are 5 people there. 40 to 49, you can see 6 and 6, and 50 to 59, 4 total people. Now let's take a look at some what-if questions. Okay, what if you change the histogram to show 4 age groups with 12-year intervals, and how would the histogram change? So the answer to that would be there would only be 4 bars. However, the frequencies would still add up to the same number. We're still dealing with the same amount of data. And also, each interval would include more ages. Okay, so the question is, explain how a histogram and a bar graph with categories are different. So let's take a look at these differences here. First of all, we already talked about this. Okay, a histogram shows frequencies, okay, for the bottom part here, okay, 10 to 19 and so on. However, also within a bar graph, there are spaces. In a histogram, there are not any spaces between the bars. Okay, so it's important to know that in a bar graph with categories, there are spaces between the bars, and a histogram shows frequencies, and there are no spaces between the bars. Okay, let's turn our books to page 288. It says the number of vacation days that each employee of a company took last summer is given below. Okay, so here's what we have. Number 1, we want to start it at 1 day and use 4 days for each interval, and then we want to list the intervals. Okay, so what we will do, as you can see, first of all, we can go from 1 to 4. That's what we mean by intervals. 4 days for each interval. However, it's important to know that the greatest number in this list is going to be 15. So make sure you identify that as well. So 1 to 4, then we have 5 to 8, then we have 9 to 12, and then we have 13 to 16. Now, even though it just seems like we're adding 3, okay, keep in mind that from 1 to 4, you got to count 1, and then 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so even though it looks like we're just adding 3, these are the intervals here. Now, what I want you to do all by yourself is to complete the frequency table using the data that's listed right above here in this problem. So pause the video now. Okay, you can see your answers now, and you should have 4, 10, 4, and 2. Now, what we need to do is we're going to complete the histogram. And the first thing we want to do is make a title for it. Okay, and we will just write vacation days taken. Let's write that in there. Okay, now for the histogram, we're going to complete it. We can see for 1 to 4, there's the frequency of 4, so we will just color that in. Let's make our bar. We'll color that right in. Now remember, one of the differences between a regular bar graph and a histogram is the fact that the graphs do touch. Okay, so 10, let's just do a different color ink. I should say the bars touch. 5 to 8, we have 10. So we'll have our bar there. And we'll color this in. And then I will have you do 9 and 12 all by yourself. I'm sorry, 9 to 12 and then 13 to 16 all by yourself. When you're finished with that, I do want you to press play, and I'll show you what your graph should look like. Just remember that the bars should be touching. Okay, so 1 to 4, 5 to 8, and then do 9 to 12 and 13 to 16. Let's pause the video now. Okay, so you can see here are the answers. 9 to 12, we have 4, and 13 to 16, we have 2. Okay, so just once again, the difference between histograms and bar graphs. Remember, histograms, the bars do have to be touching each other, and there's also intervals down here as well. Okay, I want you to do the on your own problem, page 288, all by yourself. And just keep in mind that your intervals will be 10-minute intervals. You will need to make a frequency data and make a histogram of the data. So I want you to pause the video and do all of this now. Okay, here are the answers, first of all, for your table. You should have your intervals 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and 60 to 69. Okay, then from there we tally, then we have a frequency of 6, 5, 4, 2. Now from here, your histogram should look just like this. Make sure you give it a title, you label the vertical axis, you have the intervals on the horizontal axis, and also labeled. So make sure your histogram looks just like mine. So the essential question is, how can you use a histogram to organize data? And we can see the answer is right there, and I want you to pause the video and read this answer. And when you're finished with that, that does conclude our video on histograms. If you have any questions about this concept, please come and see me.